let you worship
Hello there. I hope you're having a wonderful time. It's my prayer for you that in the month of August, God will go with you, His presence will be with you. We've been discussing a series, how to rebuild trust in a marital relationship. And thank you for those that subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for those that participated in the part 1 of this series. Today I want us to consider part 2. And in our part 2, I'll be looking at how to rebuild trust. In the last series, we talked about things that break trust in a marital relationship. And today we're going to be talking in terms of how is this trust rebuilt. I want to say first and foremost that it takes a gradual process once a major trust has been broken in a marital relationship to build the trust back. It's a gradual process. It's not going to be an instantaneous episode or incident. It takes a gradual process, and it's very important that that is taken on board. The spouse that also has broken the trust of the other person need to acknowledge what he or she has done. It's important that that is reflected on. Is very vital that that is acknowledged, because without acknowledging what's gone on, it's difficult to rebuild trust. The spouse that broken the trust will need to understand the impact or the depth of their action on the other spouse. And it's part of reflecting back, because you can think, yes, I've done something wrong, but the impact that has had on the other spouse needs to be acknowledged. And the only way that will be acknowledged is by talking to the person that has been affected. Even though trust has been broken, it should not be the end of communication. I know it's very hard, but what I'm trying to say here is without the line of communication being open and continually be open, even it's at a minimal level, because it's a gradual process, it's important that the person that has been offended or the person that's offended is able to ask the person that has been offended how that has really impacted on them. It sounds like an obvious or like a silly question, but it's not. Because you might think it's affected your spouse this way, but it could have affected them deeper than, you know, the offended spouse is thinking it has. So it's important that the person that's offended needs to get to know the depth, the impact of what they've done on the other spouse. Also, both need to be willing, the two spouses need to be willing to work on rebuilding trust. If it's one-sided, if it's the person that has been offended that wants to rebuild the trust, and the other person that was offended is not willing to rebuild the trust, it's going to be difficult. It has to take two participants. It had to take two active participants for this to work. There has to be forgiveness on the part of the person that's been offended. Forgiveness is an act of faith. The Bible tells us that we should forgive so that we shall be forgiven ourselves, paraphrasing. It's very important that as a Christian wife or as a Christian husband who's been offended, you take the part of forgiveness, basing obviously your forgiveness on the word of God that says you need to forgive. Because if you want to forgive out of emotions or out of how you feel, it's not going to happen. But if that forgiveness is born out of faith, out of obedience to God, then it's going to be easy to forgive. There has to be forgiveness on the part of the person that's been offended, because the forgiveness will open the door to the path of rebuilding trust. Without forgiveness, it's going to be difficult, because that means that every part of their heart is shut totally. There has to be forgiveness for that door to the pathway of rebuilding trust to start, for the journey to start. The offender will need to also seek the views of the person that has been offended. What do I mean by that? It's not just enough to say, I am sorry. That I'm sorry will have to be backed up by actions. And what do I mean by action? The person that has offended needs to ask the person that has been offended, how do I make it up to you? It's not just say, I'm sorry. The sorry has to carry weight to the level of, I know I've done something wrong. How do I make it up to you? And let the prescription or how you're going to make it up to the other spouse come from the person that's been offended. It's going to be really hard. But it has, and that's why I said earlier on that the two people involved needs to be willing to work to rebuild that trust. Especially in marital relation, without that trust being rebuilt, it's going to be difficult to go on as far as marital relationship is concerned. The offender needs to be willing to be vulnerable. What I mean by vulnerable is when you ask somebody, how do I make it up to you? It's a level of vulnerability. Say, you know what? I'm open to you. I'm at your service. Whatever you require me to do, I will do. So it requires a level of vulnerability. It requires a lot of humility. Because even while you're saying that, while the offender is saying that, the offended person or the offended spouse might say, no, I don't want to talk about it. But you need to keep pressing, because we're talking in terms of rebuilding trust in your marital relationship, which is also very vital. When you have found out how you need to make it up to that spouse, it's important that accountability is in place. Especially where the issue of trust being broken, it's about having an affair with someone outside. Well, you only have affair outside of marriage. When an affair has been involved, it's important that there is total accountability. What do I mean by that? If you're a spouse that makes that has your emails, it's obviously everybody's email is password protected. Your spouse needs to have access to everything you have in terms of your phone, your text messages, your emails. They need to know if you're taking calls. It's not a case of taking calls and walking away. You need to take calls while the other person, even if it's possible, put it on speaker so that your spouse will know who you're talking to and what you're talking about. That's the level of vulnerability. That is the level of accountability that is required to build trust. You need to be totally open. It's not a case of passwording protected certain messages or you giving access to one you're not giving access. It has to be. And one thing I also want to talk about is the fact that wrongdoing or offense kind of fester in the atmosphere of secrecy. When you're not secretive about your life, it's easy for you not to go back into what the offense was in the first instance, especially if it's a case of an affair. You also need to be willing to take negative reactions sometimes. You starting to make it up to the person is not a guarantee that it's going to be smooth sailing. It has to be an intentional and a conscious effort on the part of the person that's offended to make it up to the other person. The account, even when you don't get the right reaction, just keep keeping at it. Make up your mind to keep at it and to win back your spouse that you've offended. It's also important that both sides, both the offended and the offender, are patient with each other in the process of rebuilding trust. And if you come to a point where it's difficult, seek godly counsel. If you go to a local church, you can seek counsel from your pastors, or you can seek professional help. There are Christian counselors all over the place, certified, professional, qualified counselors that can counsel. If you come to a crossroad, don't give up saying, you know what, it's difficult. Seek counsel. Bring someone else in, but someone also you trust, someone who is not going to tell your story around town. I would like to recommend a movie, called Fireproof. If you're listening to me today and there has been broken trust in your relationship, I want to recommend a movie called Fireproof. It's going to bless you. It's going to encourage you, especially for the person who is trying to make it up to the other spouse, to be tenacious, to not to give up when the going gets tough, because the end product is you want to win back the trust of your spouse. It's my prayer for you today that God will give you the strength. God will give you the willingness, the strength, the power, the tenacity to go through whatever you need to go through. I was listening to a couple recently, and basically what happened was that the trust was broken. Their pastors, it was broken in a massive way. because the man went and had an affair with a church member that festered for a while. And the process of rebuilding trust took them about 3 years. But it's been 13 years now from what they said. But to the glory of God, they are together today. They are happy. Not only are they happy, they're in a position to help other couples as well. So you never know how far God is going to use you when you surrender yourself. And it's important also that you surrender the whole process to God to help you, both of you. It's my prayer that God will help you. It's my prayer that whatever has happened in your relationship, you'll be able to rebuild trust. The enemy will not succeed in breaking you apart. God will uphold you, God will strengthen you, and your marriage will work. It will work, it will function, and it will be a testimony. God bless you.